Kobolds and Cobblestones by Robert Berman is put out by Osprey Games. It's basically a skirmish game where you take on another person. This one is 64 pages, soft cover, perfect bound. Just like all the other Osprey games, you can use whatever miniatures you got. They suggest 28 millimeter. Although there are some 40 millimeter bases you're going to have to get for like ogres if you're going to run some ogres and stuff like that. But basically, you're vying against the other players for control of this city. And so you can do a campaign to see who takes over this city. And so we're going to take a look inside and see what this game's about. This is table of contents. Basically, you have an introduction to the game. The actions you can take, combat, causing damage, spending gold, how you use magic in the game, how you build your gang up. There's campaign rules, and then the 8 scenarios. All right, in this part of the book, it's basically an overview of the game. First, we have what is Ordnance Port. Why is there a truce going on, but actually there's a battle going on between the factions, but why is there a truce? How the city become to being. Playing cards, you're going to need 2 decks, but really what you need is 1 deck for yourself, which is your conflict deck, and there's going to be 1 deck called the event deck that's going to be shared between the players. So you really only need 1 of these, but each player is going to have their own deck of cards. There's no dice in this game. You're going to, like most games, you're going to have a leader, and then you buy some gang members, and they're going to be 25 millimeter figures is what they suggest on the normal base, unless you get somebody really, really large, and they would be on like maybe a 40 millimeter base. You're also going to set up the game, and this is normally played on a 2 by 2 foot area, so 2 feet by 2 feet. And where do you want to fight? Do you want to fight at the ports? Do you want to fight in the inner city? Do you want to fight where there's a bunch of houses around? Maybe even the sewers. Maybe you fight in the sewers. So where do you want to fight? And that's basically what this section is about. Like most miniatures games, there's turns. And inside a turn, there are a couple of phases. The first one is initiative. So at the start of each turn, each player is going to draw a card from the event deck. And this is that shared deck. So this player gets a 3. This player gets 5. Since this is higher than 3, 5 beats a 3, this player can decide, do they want to go first or second? And it's going to go back and forth. So let me move this out of the way. And here's this character's minis and this character's minis. And this player decides to go first. So what you use is you have the jokers. So you do not have any jokers in the deck, and this is used for movement. When you buy a mercenary, a boss, or anything like that, they will have a movement rate of W or L. W means use the width of the card. So you can just set it up here, and this character can then move to there using the width of the card. If it's the length of the card, it'll be like that, and that's how movement's done. Now you're allowed 2 other actions. So those 2 other actions can be done anytime during this movement. Movement can be done first, then you can do the 2 actions. You could do an action, movement, action, or you can do action, action, movement. So the movement can be interdispersed between those actions. Now, I will get to what the actions are in just a minute, but there's something else you need to check, and that is if there aren't opposite factions. There's a red faction and a black faction because there's red and black cards. If you're on the same side, so let me get a little roguish type character. So this is like a paladin, let's say. This is a red. And then we got this sneaky guy here, this little robber dude with a mask. He's part of the black faction, but they're on my same, I can get both of them on the same faction. If I want to activate this guy or this one, and they're within a card length of each other, I need to check, is this guy okay with this guy being near him? And what you do is you draw a card from the event deck, and generally red's cards are okay, you're successful. Black cards are bad. So if I draw a red card, he's going to activate as normal. If I draw a black card, he does nothing. I mark him as activated. It's the next player's turn. So let's see what happens. Black card I can't do anything with him. He's too worried about this guy from the other faction. He's not going to do anything. It's now the next player's turn. They activate, then I activate, they activate. And once you activate a model that turn, it cannot be reactivated until the next turn. So that means if this model gets activated, then this one, and then this one by the player, all the models have activated. That turns over. We go back to initiative. All the models can be activated again once per turn. So what are some of the other actions you can do besides that movement? Remember, you're allowed 2 other actions. One of them could be a dash. And basically, if you can move a width, you can dash a width. And then you can do it again if you like. All these actions I'm going through on this page, you could do more than once. You can also climb, and that's basically you can climb 2 cards width up. You can interact with something, so you can spend an action to open a door, pick something up, drop something. You could draw new cards, so you're saying, you get 5 cards normally, like, I don't really like these. You look at the combat value of the character that you're activated, and you're allowed to discard that many cards and draw new cards to replace them. And the other one is attack. Now, there is a magical attack, but I'll get to that in a little bit. You can only do that once. Attack with melee or ranged weapon, you could do twice if you didn't spend any actions to get to your target. All right, combat's handled a little differently in this game in that there's no dice. So what you're going to do is you're doing cards. And you're generally going to have about 5 cards in your hand. I'm just going to do 5. Plus, maybe your boss gives you some more. So this player has this many cards. And this player, is that 5? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, has that many. And each, I'm going to move this over. To do melee attack, you have to already be in base. Range attack, you have to be able to see. And I'll get to a modifier with range in just a minute. But let's say this one is going to attack him. His combat value will be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or something like that. And that tells you how many cards you can play on the attack. He's going to have a defense rating, and it's going to tell him how many cards this player can play. So let's say this has got a 3 attack, but this guy only has 2 defense. So you can play up to 3 cards. And what you're trying to do is like poker. Well, there's 3 of a kind. That's pretty good. So this player may put 3 down. This one can only play 2 cards. So they may go, they may be trying to trick me. Maybe they only have a 2 pair. This one doesn't really have anything. So he's thinking, well, maybe they don't have anything either. I'll just play that. Then you're going to compare 3 of a kind to a king. And it's basically, in that case, poker. And if you don't know which is which, what beats what, in the back of the book they have this here. So a king would be a high card, but 3 of a kind beats that. So the attacker wins. If it's a tie, let's say they both played 2 pair, tie goes to defender. Now with range combat, it's done the same way. There's no distance. It's just, can you see the whole base? So let's pretend this is a building here. Can you see the whole base from this base to this one, or is it partly obscured? If it's partly obscured, instead of getting to play 3 cards for this guy, he can only play 2. So he would only have the 2 pair. So that's the only difference between melee and range, except for being in base to base, but it's just that modifier of, can you see the whole base, or is it partially obscured? So you've hit your target, how do you cause damage? That's what this section's about. So let's go back to our example we just had, which was, this is attacking that one, and this one had 3 of a kind. Move this over a little bit so I get the book in the picture. And this one got a king. So you go back to that chart in the back and you compare, and here's the high card versus 3 of a kind, so 1, 2, 3. So the attacker beat it by 3, or you could do subtraction if you want to. But the attacker won by 3. So if we go to this chart right here, if the attacker won by 3, target model receives 2 wounds. And that's pretty much it. He's gained 2 wounds. He has so many hit points. If he gets down to 0, he's taken out of the game. Now, another thing that can happen is called critical hits. What you do is you count up, if this is a red faction, remember there's red faction or black faction. When you buy them, they tell you whether they're red or black faction. If this is a red faction, it got 1 critical because it has 1 red card it played on its attack. If it was a black faction, it would have 2 critical hits. And then this example they give here is if you get 1, this is all you can do. You can dodge. If you get 2, do you want to dodge or do a kneecap? If you get 3, you can only do 1 of those. Remember, you can only choose 1 of these. If you get 4, which one of these do you want to do? And not all of them do the same thing. Each mercenary you buy is going to have a different thing they do when they do a critical hit. Now also when you buy mercenaries, they may come with some abilities they could do, like maybe they're always angry, or they're graceful, or they have reload, which means they can do a range attack if they have reload. So this section here, and there's some more on the other page, go through some of the abilities that your boss and or mercenaries may have in the game. Now before the game, you can take some gold with you to kind of get bribes or something like that. And the max you can take is up to 10. It's up to you how much you want to take, but the most you can do is 10. There's a few things you can do with it, and one of them is counting cards. You kind of see here, so you spend 1. I'm going to use these for the coins. You spend that, and it allows you to replace a card in your hand from 1 in your discard pile. So you're like, ooh, I really need an ace of spades. It's in my discard pile. Boop. Let me take that and let me get rid of this card. So you can do that. Some other things you can do, and all these cost 1 gold, is you can, when defending, you can spend it, and you can use your attack value instead of your defending value. And if you're successful as defender, if you're successful, you actually hit the attacker, and you find out what happened to the when you hit. So it's a way for a defender to actually counterattack. Everyone's for sale is you can pay the cost of what it took to buy the dude, that mercenary, straight out, and then the attack doesn't happen, or you can spend 1 and then you draw a card. Remember, red is good, black is bad. So if you draw, I'm going to pull these cards over here, let's see. So if this card, and again it's out of the event deck, so if it's red, woohoo, bribe worked. If it's black, the attack happens, and the attack's going to happen. Let me get that so I don't know what's next. So that's what you can do there, and you can only do that once. You can't go, oh, well, let me try again. So another one is to add an extra card to your hand and take a wound away from a character and also reduce the wound. But some of these you have to play before the attack is resolved or cards are played. So check out those when you get to do that. Now, the interesting thing is these coins, these gold that you spend go in a communal pool. So if the opponent plays some, they go here. And at the end of the game, you're going to split these up between the players. So what you spend and your opponent spends gets split up between the players. So if only you spend, let's say you spend this, you're going to be splitting this up between you and your opponent, probably like that. Depends upon the mission and what happens. But so just remember that it doesn't go and disappear. It's in a communal pool at the end of the game. At the end of the game, you're going to share this between the players. All right, this section's about magic and wizards. And if you're playing a campaign, you won't see a wizard for a little while because you have to have enough money and enough prestige to get a wizard. And their combat's a little different how they cast spells. Now, they can cast like some combat spells or attack spells. So let's say this wizard wants to attack this guy. Now, as long as he can see him, he can do the spell. So it doesn't matter if he's partially concealed or not. It's the same as if he's in the open. And it's a game of 21. So what's going to happen is, I'm going to get these 2 decks out here. The defender is going to get 2 cards. And ace can be a 1 or 11. And so you can go, well, either I've got an 11 or I've got a 21. And he goes, you know, I got a 21. So this, well, I'm going to make this a little different. I know it's cheating, but here we go, 17. This wizard has to be the 17 for a spell to go into effect. So he gets 2 cards, and he's got a 15. Well, he isn't beating him, so he can decide, do I want to take another card, or just call it, nah, I'm safe. If If he calls a safe, spell fizzles, nothing happens, and you can only do one spell a turn with your wizard, and you can only have one wizard in your warband. So he decides, I'm going to try, and that's a bust. So he got a 22, so he failed. But let's say, I'm going to try to find something. Here we go. He got an 18. He beat him. So the spell goes off, and what happens? We go to our chart here, and it tells us here that he won by 1 or 2, higher than the opponent. So the target gets stunned or takes 1 or 2 or 3 damage and so forth. If the wizard would have got exactly a 21, he adds 1 damage to that. Now, just like melee and range attacks, there's also magical critical attack spells that could happen, or the effects. So what he's going to look at is how many black cards did he have? 1, 2, 3. Now this is only if he's successful at casting the spell. If he failed, doesn't count this. So he got 3. So normally you would pick one, either confuse, curse, or terrify. However, magic goes in ascending order. He gets to confuse the opponent and curse the opponent and terrify the opponent with this spell. So that is how magic works in this game. You can also do support spells, which basically is kind of like healing. And it's done the same way. Say they're on the same team, because you can only do support spells on teammates. And this defender is going to get 2 cards. So, oh gosh, a 19. So the wizard's got to beat a 19. This is this guy's natural resistance. So the wizard starts with either a 6 or a 16. So we're going to try 9, 19. Oh, 20. He did it. He won. So that goes off. And when you do support spells, this is what happens. And if you get exactly a 21, you add 1 more. You heal 1 more wound. And then you look at how many red cards did this spell use. It used 3. So this target here is going to get Changing Tides, Confidence, and Fog. Now, the other thing that can happen is the wizard just somehow busts. I mean, he went over 21. So we're just going to keep this simple. Let's say he got a 23. So the wizard got a 23. He busts. That is bad. Wizard, whenever he busts, he damages himself. If he stops below 21, he's okay. When he busts and goes over 21, that's when he damages himself. And there's a little chart here that if he got a 22 to 23, he's stunned. 24 to 25, he takes 1, 2, 3 wounds, and so forth. Now, there are magic crystals that the wizard can buy and take, and he could spend those crystals to lower the total down. So if he's sitting here at 23, he can spend 2 crystals and get it down to 21. Then he won't take any damage. Spell will go off with a bonus. So he can spend those crystals to get that total he needs so he doesn't hurt himself. And that is basically how magic works in the game. This section goes over building your gang, and the first thing you want to do is get your leader. And here's a couple examples of the leaders. This is the elf one, and then this is the kobold. But there's also a dwarf leader, a goblin, necromancer, rat man, and an orc leader. And these guys are free, and so what theme do you want for your army or gang? And then they come with some special abilities. Now these are the stats, so we're going to take a look at this guy's stat here. So this tells their allegiance, which is red, or we would say black. This is how much they cost, but these guys are doesn't cost anything. This is that long length or width of the card for movement, so he does the length of cards. Fight is 4, so you can play 4 cards. He dodges on a 4, so he gets 4 cards you can play on dodge. He can take 9 hits. This is what happens when he crits. So each creature or thing you buy is going to have that. And then these are his special abilities he has. So each leader is going to be like that. Then you can pick some mercenaries, and runts are your low level. Just you're finding somebody in the street, hand them a weapon, and they're joining your gang. Thugs are a little bit more. They may be ex-soldiers or something like that. Then there's experts, And then there's the big guys. And these guys actually go on like 40 millimeter bases, and they could be like a troll or an ogre or something like that. So you have so much gold. What mercenaries do you want to add to your band? And what special abilities do they have? So let's take a look here. I'm going to turn to a page that's got some. Here we go. So here you can see some. Here's some thugs, which are just above the runts, but below the experts. And you can see some of the stuff they can do. And like this one's, let's look here. See, this is black allegiance, and this one's red. He's going to cost 3 gold. This one costs 3. Move the width of the card, not the length. How much fight? Defense. So this one's a little less defendy. How many wounds? What happens when they crit? And remember, if you get 2 crits, you can go down and decide to do that one. If this one gets 2 crits, he can decide, does he want to do this shove, or does he want to do a kneecap? And so this kind of gives you showing a little bit about some of the mercenaries you can hire for your gang. If you decide you want to play a campaign, this is a section you would go to. And it's pretty neat because this is how you're going to improve your gang over the course of like 6 or 7 gangs. This is how you're going to hire better mercenaries. You're going to be able to get your wizard and so forth. And it basically goes through the rules of this. You can also, instead of killing the opponent's characters, you can mug them. And then basically you get money for mugging them instead of taking them out of the game, killing them. It's another way to get some more money in this game. Another thing that's kind of interesting is, say you've got a bunch of you playing in a campaign here. It's just not 2 of you, but there's 6 players. And so you're going to be playing all sorts of different people. When you're teamed up, like I'm playing you this week, Joe and John are playing each other, you can bet on Joe and John's game who's going to win before the game starts. And you take some of your gang's gold and you bet on that game saying this person's going to win, and then depending upon who wins, you may get some extra money. So I thought that was kind of neat. And then in the back here they got 8 scenarios. And one of them is just basically, let's go beat each other up. One of them is there's a carriage running away with some gold. Like Mr. Cuddly here is a creature you're either trying to capture or kill, but your opponent's trying to do the same thing. And Protect the Rat is you've got a spy on your side you're trying to protect from the opponent. And they've got a spy and you're trying to kill their spy. So those are the 8 scenarios. And in the back we have where you can do your rosters. We have the poker hand ratings and then the damage calculator. Kobolds and Cobblestones. Kind of an interesting concept here of a gang warfare, but set in the fantasy setting. So you can have orcs and goblins, kobolds, humans, dwarves, and so forth fighting over the city instead of like a 1930s, or there's another one that's like a Chinese kung fu kind of deal. So I kind of like that idea. Just like any Osprey game, you can use whatever minis you've got. So I've got these ones I've been using for Frostgrave. Well, hey, I can use them in this. The campaign's pretty cool. The combat, this is the one part that's going to be a little bit troubling for me, is the poker deal, because I don't play poker, so I feel like I'm going to constantly look at this and go, okay, hold on. All right, so do I have 5 of the same? No. About 5 cards, sequential. Do I have a straight? No. I feel like since I don't know poker, this is what's going to slow me down in the game. But I have a feeling that it's going to get quicker the more you play it. Another thing I like is that magic combat is handled differently than melee in range combat, than physical combat. I don't know how else to say it. So I do like that aspect, that it's a totally different system, that it does 21 where these others do poker. And I kind of like that idea that magic is something that's totally different, so it's going to have a different system. The card for moving is kind of a interesting idea. I'll see how that goes. I kind of maybe I will like this. I'll have to give this a try. So overall, I really do want to try this. It seems like a really simple system, except for if you don't play poker, that part there. But other than that, I think I want to try this, at least get a couple of games in and see if it's something I want to continue or not. But overall, It's so different from the other ones I've been playing with the combat system and how the critical does. Let's see, I've got a red faction guy, so I've got 3 cards there I played, I won, so I'm going to do this crit, and so forth. So I really do kind of think that's a neat system that I'd like to see maybe in some other games. So if you like some of that stuff, give Kobolds and Cobblestones a try.